The day two black SUVs screeched to a stop outside that tiny roadside shoe shop, I was standing close enough to feel Daniel's breath on my face, close enough that one more inch, and he would have kissed me. And then a man in a black suit pushed the door open, scanned the room, and called me by a name I had spent months hiding. "Miss Amelia Benson, we need to go." If someone you loved found out you'd lied about who you are in front of his whole life right in that moment, what would you have done? I froze, like my bones turned to glass. Daniel's hands dropped from my shoulders, and I watched his face as the truth hit him before I could say a word, that the girl he knew as Sophie, the broke, quiet girl sleeping on his couch and polishing shoes in his shop, was actually the only daughter of James Benson, the billionaire, the man whose last name sat on top of buildings and contracts and bank towers. And I'm the one who put that look in his eyes. Not confusion, not even anger yet, just this deep hurt like the ground had moved under his feet. So let me go back and tell you how I got there. Because this didn't start with a lie, it started with a life that didn't feel like mine. I grew up in houses, people slow their cars to stare at long driveways, glass walls, staff who moved so quietly, you almost forgot they were human, not part of the furniture. Fresh flowers every morning, polished floors, plates that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. My dad, James Benson, built a whole business empire with that calm, controlled mind of his, the kind of man other men quote when they want to sound smart. My mom, Sarah, was the face on TV. Polished hair, perfect questions, voice people trusted, while she interviewed politicians and CEOs, then came home and worried about whether my dress was brand appropriate for an event. People think that kind of life feels like freedom. Let me tell you what it really felt like living in a glass box. Everyone can see you. Everyone thinks they know you, but nobody hears you when you tap on the walls. I went to the best schools, drove in the safest cars, wore limited collections that sold out in minutes online, and every guy who fell in love with me seemed to fall in love with the same three things: my last name, my father's contacts, my mother's image. Dinners felt like negotiations. Dates felt like interviews. Every "you're so special" somehow circled back to, if your dad ever needs, or we should get your mom's show to cover. You know what I mean, that slick tone where you can hear the hunger under the compliments. Nobody asked why I hated loud music. Nobody asked why I kept standing near the emergency exits at crowded events. Nobody noticed that I preferred talking to the drivers, the kitchen staff, the sound guys more than the future leaders I was supposed to network with. There was this one night, and I think that was the crack before the collapse. I'd been paraded at another private dinner with this man. They liked Donald, clean suit, cold eyes, a laugh that sounded like it had been rehearsed in a mirror. On paper, perfect. In reality, he looked at me like I was a project, a merger clause with lipstick. On the drive home, I watched the city blur outside the tinted glass, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time someone had talked to me like a person, not a prize. I walked through our house that night past marble and soft lights, and something inside me just snapped into focus. If I stayed, I was going to disappear slowly, politely, behind a perfect smile. At dinner the next day, I didn't wait. It was my parents at one end of that long table staff, hovering like ghosts, chandeliers glowing like every movie you've ever seen about rich people lying to themselves. "I want to leave the city for a while," I said, my voice steady, even though my fingers were almost shaking against the fork. My mom's eyes sharpened. "Leave where?" "Somewhere simple," I said. "I want to live without our name, get a small job, meet people who don't know who I am. I want to see if someone can love me without any of this." She looked at me like I had announced I wanted to go live on the moon with no oxygen. "The world is harsh, Amelia. You have never had to struggle. Why run into hardship when you don't need to?" "Because here," I said softer, "nobody sees me. They see Benson. I'm tired of being a shortcut for other people." I turned to my dad. If I go, I'll go quietly. New phone, small cash, no drivers. If I don't find what I'm looking for, I will come back and I will be open to the man you want me to marry. But I need to try to choose my life before you finalize it for me. It was a gamble, and I knew it put like that on purpose because my dad understands deals. He watched me for a long time, that calculating gaze people fear in the boardroom, turned on his only kid. Then he nodded once. If this is what you need, he said, I'll support it. But call us every Sunday. Be careful. My mom shook her head, fear choking her words. You're our daughter, not a test case. People can hurt you. I'll be careful, I repeated. But inside a door opened for the first time. Pattern interrupt. If you think this is the part where they nobly let me grow and everything stays respectful, hold that thought. That night, I stripped my life down. No designer luggage, just a plain bag. 2 jeans, some shirts, 1 simple dress, flats, a sweater, a little first aid pouch. I took out my SIM, left my main phone in the drawer like I was burying a limb. Bought a tiny basic phone with a new number. Took off all the branded jewelry, kept the small cross I'd worn since I was a kid, when life was simpler and no one knew my name. I stood in front of the mirror and tried on a new identity. My name is Sophie, I whispered. It felt weird but right. A small name. A name you wouldn't Google. The next morning, no driver, no convoy. Just me, my bag. The gate man staring like he'd never seen a Benson walk out on foot before. My dad stood on the steps with his hand in his pocket, looking like he wanted to call me back, but wouldn't. Call me every Sunday, he called out. I will. My mom hugged me like I was going to war. In a way, I was. I walked into the sun, and for the first time in my life, nobody moved out of my way because of my last name. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. By noon, the city had already slapped that beauty out of my hands. I went to the Central Market because I'd heard that was where you find cheap rooms, cheap things, real life. It was chaos. People shouting, kids running horns everywhere, the air thick with dust and frying oil and sweat, my head pounding. I clutched my bag to my side, or I thought I did. 1 second I was checking a stall, the next second I felt lighter. Wrong kind of light. I checked the bag. The zipper was open. The envelope with most of my cash was gone. My throat closed. My fingers dug through everything, as if the money might magically be hiding under my spare sweater. In my pocket, only the plastic of my SIM card, not a single note. Real fear is cold. It doesn't care about your upbringing. It just says you are trapped and lets that echo in your chest. A cab driver rolled up beside me. Madam, where you dey go, come I carry you. I got in numb. Asked for somewhere cheap where I could find a lodge. We drove a short route, stopped in front of a tired line of guest houses. That will be 10,000, he said. I swallowed. 10,000, that seems too high. Traffic long. I use a better way. Pay my money. I reached automatically for money that wasn't there. I'm so sorry my cash was stolen at the market. If you give me your number, I swear I'll send it. He laughed loud, angry. You think I be fool, pay me now. People started watching. My face went hot like I had been stripped in public. No one recognized me, no one cared, I was just some woman trying to dodge a fare. I'm not lying, I said, voice shaking. He raised his voice. Pay me my money. Is there a problem here? That voice cut through everything. He stepped forward from the shade of a nearby shop, close enough I could see the small scar on his arm, the lines on his hands from work t-shirt, a little worn jeans, clean, but old eyes, steady, serious. The driver pointed at me. She no get money, say thief collect. I no work for free. The stranger looked at me straight, like he was searching my face for anything fake. Is that true? I nodded, humiliated but honest. Yes. They took my money. I told him I'd send it back. He doesn't believe me. Without a speech, without rolling his eyes, he reached into his pocket, counted the notes, and handed them over. Here, you have your pay. The driver snatched it and drove off, still muttering. I stood there in the dust, hugging an empty bag, fighting tears. Thank you, I whispered. I don't know how to repay you. You don't have to, he said. Just be careful. This place can swallow you if you let it. He pointed up the road. There's a place called Mama Peace Inn, second gate on the left. Ask there. I'm Sophie, I said. He gave the tiniest nod. Daniel. Then he went back toward the market, disappearing into the crowd, like he was just another person in the story, not the first crack in my glass life. I found Mama Peace Inn. They wanted $3,000 a night. No money, no room. Simple policy. Simple rejection. I walked back out, sat on a concrete step, holding that pointless bag, watching the sky dim. That was the first time I almost called my father to come rescue me. Pride and desperation fought in my chest like wild dogs. Then I heard a girl shout, "No, please, that's my brother's change." Two older boys were laughing, running off with a few notes that probably meant everything to her. She chased, but she was too small, too slow. Without thinking, I went to her, asked if she was okay, made sure she wasn't hurt. I couldn't get her money back, but I could at least treat her like she mattered. She studied me, eyes sharp. "You're not from here," she said. "No," I admitted. "Just trying to figure things out." "You have a place to sleep?" she asked. My silence answered for me. "Come with me," she said. Instantly my brain said, this is how people get trafficked. Kidnapped, robbed, all those horror stories they told me as a kid, but something in her voice felt real, and honestly, the street was not a safer option. Her name was Diana. Their home was 2 rooms, faded walls, curtain door bucket in the corner, small table kettle on a kerosene stove, mat folded near the wall. But it was clean. It was alive. "My brother is inside," she said, pulling the curtain back. He stepped out. "Daniel, you know those moments where your life feels like it's being written by someone with a sense of humor?" "Yeah, that happened." We stared at each other. "You," I started. "You," he said back. Diana looked delighted. "So you know each other?" He listened as she told him I'd helped her, that I had nowhere safe to sleep. He sighed, and it sounded like someone who has seen too much of the world to trust easily. "One night," he said at last. "You can sleep on the couch. After that, we see." That night, I lay on that small couch under a worn wrapper, listening to water drip outside, and someone on the next block playing a radio too loud, and I felt more human than I had in years. Uncomfortable, hungry, anxious, but human. "Thank you," I whispered to the dark. Morning came early. Kerosene smell, water boiling, Diana moving around. Daniel getting ready for work. He watched as I folded my makeshift bedding neatly, as I offered to sweep, to fetch water, to do something, anything. "You can stay some days," he said eventually. "But this is not charity house. You help, and you pay back that cab money." "Let me work," I said. "At your shop. I'll do anything." He raised a brow. "You all right. You'll start with polishing. You mess up, you owe me." The shop was small wooden bench, old sign shelves of tired shoes, a fan trying its best. But it was his. You could feel it. At first, everything about me screamed outsider. I asked stupid things like if there was a laundromat, if they'd thought about getting a small electric cooker, if maybe they should do digital receipts. The kind of suggestions that sound helpful when you've never had to count coins before. "We use what we can afford," Daniel said one day, and it stung because it was fair. Then I shut up and started learning. Diana taught me how to carry the bucket without spilling, how to stretch small pieces of soap, how to fold clothes to save space. At the shop, Daniel showed me how to dust first, then polish in small circles, then brush to bring out an even shine. My first pair came out embarrassing. One toe shiny, the other sad, a dark clump of polish in the corner. Diana nearly choked, trying not to laugh. "Try again," Daniel said, not soft, not cruel, just expecting better. And I did. Until the leather shined smooth under my hands. That tiny, silly moment, making something right with my own effort, lit me up. Little by little, I stopped acting like a guest and started acting like I belonged. I swept. I kept records. I joked with Diana. I burned myself on the stove and learned not to. I went to bed tired from work, not from pretending. At night, I'd step outside to call my parents from a borrowed phone. "I'm okay," I told them. "I'm working learning. Don't worry. Come home if anything feels wrong," my mother said always. "I will." I'd lie because if I came home just because it got hard, then everything I said I wanted was fake. Days passed. We became a unit. That's the only word for it. Then one afternoon, a man from the local business office showed up with a clipboard talking about a 200,000 micro grant to support small businesses. Daniel was suspicious, and honestly, he had every right to be. "It's probably one of those things that never reach people like us," he muttered. "Let's just read it," I said. "If it's trash, we throw it away. If it's real, we don't miss our shot." We sat shoulder to shoulder at that small bench, filling in forms side by side. When it asked what he'd do with the money, he didn't talk nonsense. "Fix the machine, buy better leather, make the shop better, pay for Diana's prep course. Save a little," he said. I wrote it exactly like that. Pattern interrupt. No consultant, no flashy pitch deck, just truth on cheap paper. Sometimes that's all it takes. Weeks later, he was approved. 200,000. Just like that. We used it right, no games. New tools, small fan, cleaned up sign, better supplies. And Daniel walked into a school office and paid Diana's 150,000 course fee, holding the receipt like it was gold. That night we ate better, laughed louder. I watched his face as he looked at his sister, and something in my chest hurt in a good way, like seeing the kind of man nobody had ever tried to introduce me to at those polished dinners. Of course, the past had to come knocking. Her name was Anita. She bounced into the shop in sharp heels and loud perfume, complaining about how long it had been since she saw him brushing off his calls like they were some funny story. She looked at me like I was dirt. "You work with her now," she said, voice dripping. "A girl polishing shoes in this heat. No ambition." I lifted my chin. "It's honest work." She laughed, tossed her hair, demanded money for her rent. Didn't ask about Diana. Didn't care about the shop. Didn't say thank you when she left. Days later, she came back worse, asking for me, calling me that girl, and telling Diana to stay out of grown people's conversations when Diana defended me. Daniel finally drew a line. "If you can't speak with basic respect to people in my life, don't come here," he said. Not long after that, he caught her with another man. He didn't throw things. He didn't beg. He just ended it simple and final. And weirdly, that calm hurt her more than any scene would have. With her gone, the air changed. Lighter, quieter, real. Somewhere in that quiet, something bloomed between me and Daniel, slow and stubborn, like a plant pushing through cracked concrete. We worked side by side, our shoulders bumping sometimes. He'd correct my work, I'd tease him about his serious face. I listened to him talk about law school and doors that never opened. He listened to my fake backstory. No family, moving from place to place. And I hated that part, but I held on to it because I was so scared of losing what we had if I gave him the truth. He made me a small leather key holder one night, brown with a tiny star stamped in his hands. A little awkward as he gave it to me. "It's nothing," he said. "It's perfect," I whispered, and I meant it more than I'd meant half the jewelry I'd ever worn. By then I was gone for him. And he, even if he fought, it was gone for me. One evening near closing, he put the brush down, wiped his hands, and looked at me like he'd finally decided to jump. "Sophie," he said, voice low, careful. "When you're not here, I think about you. When you're here, this place feels full, not just busy, but alive. You work hard, you care for Diana, you make our life better. I care about you, more than I planned to, more than I should." My heart crashed against my ribs. "I feel the same," I said, and for once no lies were in that sentence. "I didn't expect this, but it's real." He stepped closer. His hand brushed my cheek so gentle, like he was afraid I might break. We leaned in. Then the world broke, the door open. Two black SUVs, Men in dark suits, the bell ringing too hard as they marched in. "Miss Amelia Benson," one said like a verdict. "Your phones are off, we couldn't reach you. Your mother is unwell. You need to come with us, now." Silence swallowed the shop. Daniel's hand dropped. "Amelia," he repeated like he was tasting poison. "Is that your name?" I couldn't hide anymore. "Yes," I whispered. Diana stared. The fan hummed like it didn't know what else to do. "I'm sorry." I said useless words before they guided me out back into a world I thought I'd left. "Do you think that's fair what I did to him? Be honest." Back at the mansion, the mask snapped back on my face so fast it hurt. But I wasn't the same underneath, and that made everything uglier. They sat me down calm corporate. My mother was fine, not sick. They had lied. While I had been out there trying to prove I could be more than a Benson, my father's latest deal had gone south. Investors nervous. A merger appeared on the table. The other party wanted security legacy ties. And what better bond than the Benson heiress right? So they dragged me back with a fake emergency to force me into a marriage that had nothing to do with love. Everything to do with leverage. That was the twist that flipped my story for real the moment I realized the people I'd been trying not to disappoint were fully prepared to use me like a bargaining chip. They froze my accounts. They monitored my calls. They said things like, "You had your little adventure, and now it's time to be serious." They talked about sacrifice and duty from a couch that cost more than Daniel would make all year. I thought of Diana's worn notebooks, Daniel's rough hands, the way he believed me when I said I'd work for my keep, and something in me hardened. I might have lied to him, but my parents were lying to the whole world. So I did the only thing I could behind those walls. I called Grace, one of the house staff, a girl with more spine than most of the executives I'd met. "I need you to find someone," I told her. "His name is Daniel. He runs a shoe shop near the market. Tell him I didn't just disappear. Tell him why they brought me back. Tell him they're trying to force a wedding I don't want." She looked scared, but she went. And Daniel, that man with every reason to hate me, walked into my father's world instead of away from it. He came to the gate, asked for Mr. Benson, not to beg for me, but to talk. He stood in our marble foyer in the same kind of clothes he wore at the shop, shoulders squared, eyes clear. "I'm here because of Amelia," he said. "She shouldn't be forced into a marriage for your business." My father looked at him like a stain. "You think you and my daughter have any future? You overstepped. Leave." Security moved. I heard raised voices, recognized Daniel's tone, and I ran out before anyone could stop me. I saw him. I saw my father's jaw. I opened my mouth to speak, to say everything, and then the world tilted. I had been holding too much. Anger, fear, stress, hunger, all of it, for too many days. I fainted. If Daniel hadn't been there, my head would have cracked on our perfect polished floor. He caught me calling my name. Not Sophie, not Heiress, just me. Later, when I woke up, I saw the fear in my father's eyes. Real fear. Not for the deal, not for the headlines. For me. I told them everything. I left because I wanted someone to see me. I said, eyes wet. I found that. I love him, and I will not be traded for a merger. My mom cried mascara ruined for once. "She's our only child," she told my dad. "If we break her for numbers, what does that make us?" My father looked at Daniel standing there exhausted, ready to be thrown out, but too stubborn to bow. Then he looked at me, pale, angry, shaking. Something gave. "The marriage is off," he said finally. "I'll call them. It ends here." He turned to Daniel. "I spoke to you like you were nothing. That was wrong. I'm sorry." Daniel, being Daniel, tried to say it wasn't needed. "Later," my father said. "We talk later. For now, she needs rest." That was the pivot, the point where power flinched first. Stick around. I would tell anyone listening at this point, because what happened next will blow your mind. Over the next days, things shifted. My parents asked questions they had never asked before about Daniel's family, his work, his dreams. They didn't turn into saints overnight, but they listened. Daniel came to dinner nervous as hell, but honest. He talked about losing his parents, about law school doors closing, because he didn't have the right names behind him, about fixing shoes, because that was what would keep his sister safe. My father recognized that kind of grit, even if he'd never had to live it. My mother saw the way I looked at him, the way I relaxed in his presence, and quietly moved her support to my side. No big dramatic speeches about class unity, just a simple, "If he makes you this brave, I can learn to respect that," from my father. They didn't offer him a position or try to buy him, and that was their first smart move. When I went back to visit Daniel and Diana, this time as Amelia fully no lies, I stepped out of a car my dad insisted on sending, wearing plain clothes I chose, and walked up that narrow lane with my heart in my throat. Daniel was at the door. We just looked at each other for a second. "I'm sorry," I said, "for lying, for making you find out that way. But what I felt every day in that shop, on that couch, in this house, that was real. I promise you that." He let out a breath. "You hurt me," he said, and it landed like a weight on my chest. "But I saw you work. I saw you choose us when you could have run. I saw you sleep on that old couch without complaining. Carry water, burn your fingers on that stove, fight for Diana, fight for the shop. That doesn't come from someone who thinks they're above us." And right there in front of that faded house, we had the conversation most movies skip. About power, about trust, about the fact that I could leave any time and he couldn't. About money, about pride, about what love looks like when one hand starts out heavier than the other. In the end, we made a choice to try anyway, with everything on the table. I offered to invest in the shop properly, legally, as a partner, not as some savior. He hesitated, then agreed on one condition: clear contracts, joint decisions, no secret strings from my family. So we did it right. Better machines, better materials, a bigger space, but the same core: quality, honesty, patience. Orders grew. People liked the designs that blended his craft with my sketches. We started a school shoe line named after Diana, tough and affordable, because kids like her deserved more than shoes that fell apart in 3 months. Diana got into university. My parents helped some, but on Daniel's terms. My mom talked quietly on her show about listening to your children instead of branding them, never saying my name, but I heard myself between her words. One night on a rooftop above the city, Daniel pulled out a small leather box he'd made by hand. Inside, a simple ring and a tiny printed line from something I had once said without thinking: "Love is work and warmth." "You walked into my life with one bag and way too much heart," he said, voice choking just a little. "You lied, you made mistakes, so did I. But you chose to stay, to fight, to build. Will you marry me, Amelia, as you, and let me love you as me, not your last name?" "Yes," I said before he even finished. Our wedding wasn't a show. Small garden, our families, some friends, soft music, both worlds in one place, not clashing, just learning to breathe together. Guests went home with little star-stamped key holders, like the one that started it all. We still argue. We still worry. People still gossip. Some say he married for money. Others say I married down. Some investors quietly backed off from my father's companies because the optics changed. Some people online, when they hear parts of the story, call me manipulative or tell Daniel he was stupid to forgive me. That's the part I want to leave with you, because love stories aren't fairy tales with clean edges. They're messy, uncomfortable, full of power imbalances. Second chances, people trying to grow while dragging all their past mistakes behind them. So now I'm asking you, not as an heiress or a character, but as a woman who has been used, who has used others, who has lied and also bled to make things right. If you were Daniel, would you have trusted me again? If you were me, would you have hidden your name just to see if someone could love you without it? If you were my parents, would you have canceled a billion-dollar merger for your child's heart? Or would you say, duty comes first? Do you think it's ever truly possible to have equal love when one person comes from that much power and money, no matter how humble they try to live. I know what I chose. Every morning when I walk into our shop and see both our names on the glass, his from the dust mine from the towers, I choose to believe we can use what I was born into and what he built together without letting either one own us. But I really want to know what you think. So tell me in the comments, be brutally honest if you have to. Was I wrong to lie in the beginning? Or did the end justify it for you? Would you forgive a partner who hid a huge truth about their identity to test the world? Have you ever been loved for the wrong reasons? Or judged for where you came from instead of who you are? Drop your thoughts below, argue, agree, call me out, defend me. Tell your own story about money, class, love, betrayal, second chances. And if this story hits something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit like so more people see it, and subscribe. If you want more real, messy stories that don't pretend life is simple. I read what you write, and maybe your story is the next one I'll tell.